Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of the Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Texas Hill Country Fishing Report with Greg Welander of Upstream on the Fly. How you doing, Greg?
Well, hi, Marvin. I'm doing fantastic. It's a great time of year to be out on the water here in Texas.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I looked at your weather, and I mean, it's pretty warm.
It is. It is, and it has been, and it's going to continue at least for the next 7 days. In doing these fishing reports, sometimes I feel like a weatherman, but the weather is important to take into consideration when you're out, especially this time of year chasing fish. So, as we pass the halfway point in the month of November, let's not rush it, in November.
Yeah, don't cheat the e-commerce people. They'll be really unhappy with you if you tell them it's December 15th.
No, I know. We don't want to miss Black Friday. It's my email inbox is already getting stuff in there about pre-Black Friday. They're like wanting to start it earlier. So, but anyway, back to fishing. Up until this past weekend, we've only had one kill front to speak of since our last podcast, and it was a Pacific front, which is typically a dry front and not as severe in temperature change. So the temperatures have been mild. We've had several days, in the 80s and for highs, and the lower temperatures at night have been in the 60s. This past weekend, though, Sunday specifically, we had gotten a cold front here in Central Texas, and it knocked our daytime highs back into the 60s, and our evening lows have been bottoming out in the low 40s. So that definitely starts to change water temperature. However, the 7-day forecast coming up is back in the 70s, and then nighttime lows are warming up into the 50s. But once again, I'm going to be talking about the Lower Colorado River just east of Austin. That's I've been staying busy guiding out there for the last couple of weeks, and I have not been on any other river. Just because of how well that river is fishing right now. The conditions are perfect on the Lower Colorado. This past week, the water temperatures, I had my thermometer with me and started, being aware of water temperatures. And the water temperatures in the morning have been running in the low 70s, with the afternoon water temperatures already jumped up to like the mid 70s. And that's, because of the sun, and also depend on the water depth. There's a lot of shoals right now that are extremely shallow. So, water's warming up a little bit quicker and easier. But we're, mostly having sunny days, very few cloudy days. But, the farther we get, behind a little northern, the more typical, humidity starts to build up, and, we start to see a little bit of morning clouds and even some foggy starts to the day, which could make it a little damp, but that's only around for an hour or two in the morning after we get through a front, and we've got, 4 or 5 days behind it. But no rain to speak of. We haven't been having rain. So from the environment standpoint, that's not a good thing, but from a fishing standpoint, it's a real good thing. Especially on the Lower Colorado. So the flows coming out of Longhorn Dam have been low, making basically the rivers low and clear. And, the water flows on the Colorado is still about 150 CFS as an average goes. This past Sunday when we did have a cold front, I saw the gauges spiked up to about 250, and that was more so because of the overnight lows in the 40s, and that was due to generation. So it wasn't a constant flow; it was only a spike. And but you go back and look at the gauges, and the flow's back down, below 200. And I've been fishing this section out of my raft, which is a good thing because there's a lot of rock and a lot of shallow water. So shallow where there's a couple gravel bars that I've got to physically get out and just kind of get the raft through. The clients will stay in the boat, but you'll generally have some sweepers, some trees where you're going to wash under the trees because there's not as much water in the river, not making it as wide. It'll narrow down. But the algae bloom has died off, because the water temperatures are cooler. So the river's, looking like a lot of our hill country streams. Matter of fact, I had a buddy of mine text me last week. He had saw a few of my live stories, that are on the Instagram feed. And he said, "Are you fishing on the Guadalupe River?" And I texted him later that evening and said, "No, that was the lower Colorado." And he was like, "Wow." So water's nice, clear, and kind of that little bit of a green hue to it. But the topwater bite has been mostly in the afternoon. However, we still have fish that are, most of the fish are still in the top third of the water column. So shallow running streamers have been on the menu over the last couple of weeks with, one thing to notice is after a frontal system. So basically this time of year or throughout the year, we always predominant winds are southeast. So when we do get a change in the wind direction out of the north, the fish will move a little bit lower in the column. So they're not, quite as easy to get on, on the top water or on some of your, I'm going to say 1 to 2 foot depth flies. So they bump down a little bit deeper, but then they'll be right back up, in that top third, after a day or two as the temperatures start to warm. So that means, be aware of the frontal systems. And if you're out on the water, the day after a front, the heavier flies. And what I mean by that is, dumbbell eyes, haven't really had to get the sink tips yet or anything. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in the tips and techniques section, of our talk today. But, I've also noticed that fly size has really been dictating the size of fish being caught right now. That doesn't mean that you won't catch smaller fish. Some of these guads are just like twice the length of a fly. So, I mean, my clients are still putting, mostly Guadalupe bass in the boat, but with a bigger fly selection, I will see a lot more largemouth bass start to be caught. But on a good day right now, that means, roughly 4 largemouth total caught a day. And I go many days without a largemouth coming in the boat. And the largemouth, though, that are caught, there could be a few big ones caught at this time of year. I had a client last week catch a 4-pound largemouth. So that was a good thing. But, we're catching like 30 to 40 Guadalupe bass in a day. And those are fish of all sizes. But I'm starting to see a lot bigger ones as we start to get later into the year. But most of my trips, we're not seeing as many Guadalupe, or not as many largemouth. It's primarily Guadalupe bass. Last week I had 3 consecutive trips in a row, and I got to thinking about it and started running numbers. And in 3 days I saw over 100 fish come to the net, and out of those 100 fish, only 5 of them were largemouth bass, which they all came on one day, actually. Oh, no, actually 4 on one day and 1 on the next day. So it's been great fishing for the state fish of Texas, which is the Guadalupe bass. And I've seen a few white bass show up, too, by my clients, which is, this time of year, on a river like the lower Colorado River, the white bass does what most white bass do as we get into late winter, early spring, and they'll start to move upstream. Now, I'm a long way from the low water shoal or the dam, rather. It's not the full dam, but the weir, okay? There's a weir upstream on the Colorado that the white bass will stack up on when you get in the month of December and definitely in January and February. But that's as far as they can go. They can't go all the way up to Longhorn Dam there in Austin. So I'm witnessing, the white bass starting to group up and go upstream because there'll be a bycatch for my anglers. So tips and techniques. How are these fish being caught on the Lower Colorado? So for streamers, it's all been about the shad. We're due to the fish remaining higher in the water column the last couple of weeks, we really have not been trying any crawfish patterns for our subsurface patterns. We're sticking with shad and, any bait fish. So typically your big deceivers, your big clousers, and the clousers are dumbbell weighted. And those generally come out on the days where we're right after the front and we're having to get our fly down a little bit deeper. The bushwhacker, the micro game changers, the lunch monies have all been producing. It really has not gotten down to a specific pattern. It has gotten down to the color, which is white, and the size of the fly. You want to start seeing bigger fish. So, like I said in my last fishing report, you can have chartreuse, you can have gray as your top colors on the fly, but make sure there's white on the belly, and it'll be good, and a lot of flash. It seems like the heavily flash flies are getting more attention right now than the sparsely flashed flies. And my clients are all throwing 7 and 8 weights, and that definitely allows for the bigger patterns to be thrown. And the hook sizes are 1/0 just down to size 2. And floating line is still the best fly line to go with. But as we start to see a change in weather, that's when, based on water temperature, as it starts to get down in the lower 60s, it'll be time to start to pull out some of the sinking lines, try to catch some fish. But, the top water is still a valid option, but more so in the afternoon. The white double barrel poppers in a medium size, just like I talked about last time, on a size 2 hook. So any top water that's bait fish driven is like, 1/0 down to size 4 working. Deer hair sliders are awesome. I kind of like white bellies on those flies and maybe kind of a gray back, but, the color of the back doesn't matter a whole lot. But I prefer white over any other color, olive or yellow, but stay with the white-bellied deer hair sliders. And as I mentioned, earlier, it's in the afternoon. So if you're out on the water on the day, you definitely want a sunny day because that will warm your water up. And the topwater bite will still be going on in the afternoon. So there we have it, Marvin. The month of November's been a good one here in Texas, in the Texas Hill Country.
Yeah, well, there you go. And, we've got a question from Aaron, and it's about the San Marcos River. And he wondered why it fishes better in the winter. And I guess he wanted to know, is it because the water temperatures are constant? Because my understanding is the San Marcos is spring fed. Is that kind of the secret sauce to the winter fishing, or is it something else?
Aaron, it's good that you had a question. The San Marcos is, just like Marvin was saying, is a spring-fed river. And the San Marcos does keep a constant water temperature since it is heavily spring-fed. So that is definitely one important reason why the San Marcos fishes well. The second reason, and while not a lot of people notice this, but there's a tubing operation on the San Marcos, which is kind of upstream of a lot of the water that I fish. And the tubing operation, I'll notice it because the water quality will start to kind of get milky. And it depends on, how many people are out on the water tubing that day. And of course, I'm not seeing tubers when I'm fishing, but the water, of course, flows downstream. And I have noticed milky water sometimes in the summertime. And in the wintertime, you don't have any tubing going on. You don't have a lot of water recreation going on other than folks like ourselves, out there wanting to chase fish with the fly rod. water temperature is extremely important in the winter. And I'm going to give you an example. There's power plant lakes in Texas that are, providing power to the cities throughout Texas. That Lake Bastrop is one of them down here in Central Texas. There's others farther south, and there's others up north. But during the wintertime, a lot of the bass anglers will be spending their wintertime out on the power plant lakes, and the reason for that is the water's warm. Okay, same, similar like the San Marcos, however, that's spring-fed water. But warm water in the winter definitely helps, and watch your frontal systems and try to hit that, 2 or 3 or 4 days after that northern blew in, and the San Marcos will be fishing very well. So there you have it, Aaron. I appreciate the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, we love questions on the articulate fly. You can email them to us or send them to us on our Facebook or Instagram page. If we use your question, I'll send you some articulate fly swag, and it's coming up soon. You'll get entered into a drawing for some cool stuff that Greg's going to pull together. And before I let you hop, Greg, why don't you let folks know where they can find you so they can book you and fish with you before things get too cold?
Okay, yeah. You can find me on my website, which is upstreamonthefly.com, and also over on social media, on Instagram and Facebook under Upstream on the Fly.
Well, there you go. And folks, we won't talk to you again until after Thanksgiving. So everyone, please have a safe and happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, Greg.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, Marvin, and all the listeners. Thank you.